In today's session, we like to discuss about the investors' sentiment. Sentiment is mostly related to the feelings, emotion, mood, affect, these things which are cognitive and which are more psychological. And we need to learn that this feeling, this mood, emotion, in one term, the investor sentiment. So what will be our focus? That is how the sentiment, mood, feelings might have influence on the decisions we go for taking, and what are the findings regarding the sentiment related errors what people made. And we also try to see that are there any measure to assess the sentiment. And we also try to see what are the implications for the sentiment in the financial market. So in sentiment, before going to understand the sentiment, let me share the issue that psychologists tend to claim that people estimate any kind of risk in two ways, in two processes. So one process is very rational, another process is far from rational. So what kind of process is rational? Process for what? Process for analyzing risk. So this kind of process is rational, which is analyzing risk. So this is the rational part or rational process. So if a person has been given task that estimate risk for this investment or estimate risk for spending, estimate risk for purchasing this asset. So what a rational person will do? A rational person will collect information. A rational person will try to summarize the events, what may be likely to happen. Then a rational person will go for estimating the probabilities for each of the event. Then that person will calculate by having some numerical numbers for each of these event and the probability. Rational person will go for estimating the variance. And we tend to believe that variance is a measure of risk, and variance is used, or a standard deviation is used in analysis of risk. So that is the way how risk as analysis is estimated, or how risk as analysis is processed. And the second process, which is more related to feeling, more related to emotion, and more related to subjective assessment, rather than this kind of objective assessment. I would request you to mute your microphone. Okay. In risk as feelings, what people will do, people get influenced by their emotion, by their feeling, and by their past experiences. People do not go for objectively estimating the risk. Say, for example, if I ask you that what is the risk in our stock market, so what you will go for estimating the average return in our stock market, and you will go for comparing the average return with the monthly return of your observation period. And then you will go for estimating the risk. And say, for example, you have mentioned that our standard deviation is 20% in our stock market, and you have come up with this number. And this output has been possible by risk-based analysis. Okay. Now, if you ask your family members or ask your friends who are not involved in finance or finance background, if you ask them that what is the risk in our stock market investment, so they tend to believe that the risk is 100%. The risk is 100%. So what do you think? Is it rational? What should we do? How to go for estimating the risk? Risk-based analysis or risk-based feeling? So why some people has come up with this 100% number or 80% number or 50% number, or some people might say that 200%. So these are the numbers which come from feeling, which does not come from analysis. So why people come up with this kind of number? Because people have a lens through which they see their world, and that lens distorts the reality. And that lens is the feeling, that lens is the emotion, that how people estimate the risk using their emotion. So some people who are very emotional in their risk estimation, they will come up with a very high risk number for the stock market investment. And some people who does not have very high emotion with the money matter, they will come up with a very low risk number for the stock market investment. But either of this person is not doing the right thing. So the right thing is the risk-based analysis. So differences in emotion causes individuals to interpret the same situation in different ways. So one particular example can be, say for example, two person, A and B. They both are unhappy today for some reason. So this person A, might feel that I'm very unhappy today, and I will go for making a very reckless driving today. So he's doing a reckless driving, that person, because he's unhappy. He tries to find out this kind of event. But at the same time, person B is unhappy, but person B might engage that I will not talk to anyone today because I am unhappy. But you see, these both persons are unhappy, but person A is going for engaging in some risky activity, but person B is not doing something risky. He's just leaving his friends, he's just leaving his family members. So these people, if you so these things, why they are different, though they are unhappy, they are same in their emotion that they are unhappy, but their action after their unhappiness are different. So these people, if you ask them same situation or a single event, and if you ask opinion from both of these people, you will see that these people will explain the same thing differently. So because of the emotion, uh, and though they are unhappy, there might be some other reasons, and there might be differences in their unhappiness. Why this person is unhappy, or why person B is unhappy? So in economics, sentiment has been given no space, because economics always look for rational people making rational decision, and rational person is not likely to get influenced by his sentiment, mood, emotion. These things cannot influence the decision of rational individual. But recently, some behavioral economists have addressed the issue that sentiment might have influence on the decision making of the individuals. So what rational economists always think for, they always think for people always look at the utility, whatever the person's happiness, unhappiness. If the person is sad today, if the person is happy today, if the person is excited today, if the person is very depressed today, these things, this should not have any effect on the decision. Only which thing will have effect, the utility from the decision will have effect, and rational person will always make decision just by looking at the utility numbers. And recently, what I just have mentioned, that recently behavioral economists in particular have started to address that there have the influence of sentiment, feeling, and emotion of individuals on the market movement. And if you read the financial newspapers or financial news regularly, you will see that the journalist or financial press are very likely to explain the market movement in terms of sentiment, feeling of individuals or investors. They do not like to go for look for the fundamental reason why the market is doing very well today, or market is not doing very well today. They tend to look for the individual investors' sentiment for the positive movement in the market and for negative movement in the market. So one thing, one quotation I like to share from the Robert Shiller, who is the Nobel Prize winner, the behavioral economist. He mentioned in his text the irrational exuberance that the emotional state of investors has influence on the bull market. So you see that market is sometimes very bullish, or market is sometimes very bearish. So it is very difficult to find out the fundamental reason why sometimes market is very bullish, why sometimes market is very bearish. So recently, the economists tend to believe that there should be a linkage to the feeling of investors, their emotional state, with the bullish movement of the market or the bearish movement of the market. So we like to ask the question that whether mood of the investors move market, or can we try to develop an equation like that, the mood of investors, does it equal to mood of market? Does it equal or it does not equal? It is not equal. That is the question. So it has been found that sometimes it is equal, sometimes it is not equal. So let's discuss with some evidence. So one evidence is this one, first one, which analyzed the return of the 26 international stock exchanges and tried to get linkage with the sunshine at the morning. So it has been found that when there is a good sunshine in the morning, it leads to higher stock return on that day. And when the sunshine is not good, the stock return got depressed, or stock return get depressed. So we'll try to see the evidence more detail or some other evidence. We'll just try to see that this evidence which are related to sentiment, and it has been found that sentiment has impact on the market return. And you know very well that in developed countries or in many countries, there is a practice of daylight savings. So in UK, when there is a March 29, and there is another day, most probably October, and what they do in during this time after March 29, or between this time, they maintain this time, GMT. I mean, this time is right now 6 hours back from our time. And between October to March, their time is not GMT, rather GMT plus 1. So it is just for the purpose of daylight saving or for maximizing the use of daylight. So on the day when the clock time has been changed, 2 days, in March, 1 day, probably it's 29 confirmed, but I can't confirm on which day in October or September right now. It's probably on October. Okay. So in these 2 particular days, clock time, during this time, clock time changes by 1 hour. So for this disruption, sudden disruption, it has been found that the traders' sleeping pattern get disturbed for these changes. So on that particular day, when the clock time changes, it has been found that stock market fall. So researchers tried to find out the linkage why stock market fall on that particular day. So they tried to find out the linkage that on that day, traders sleeping got disturbed for the clock changes due to the daylight savings time. So another thing, another findings which is related to sentiment, that is that World Cup outcome, that some countries get eliminated from the World Cup games, and some countries get forwarded or get selected to the next event or next game. So these things are particularly related to the stock market return on that particular country. So it has been found that, say, for example, in Germany, if Germany get eliminated from the World Cup elimination stage, it has been found that their stock return goes down on that day or after that day. And the opposite thing happens when the country does not get eliminated. So we'll try to see the evidence later. Okay. So this is one evidence that is related to the daylight. And what do you think? Do you feel more happy when there is a daylight, more daylight, or you feel more happy when there is a less daylight? I'm asking a question that in which case you feel more happy. For example, during summer in our country, the daylight is available for longer hours. But during winter, the daylight available is very relatively for shorter number of hours. So in which time you feel more happy or you feel more unhappy? In which case?
So
Yes,
we'll
no.
feel happy when we get more time to sleep.
Okay, so just convert this in the opposite direction. Yeah, in which time you get more time for sleeping? Summer or winter? Winter.
No, sir.
Winter.
Winter.
Okay.
Winter. Yes.
But so does your sleeping get influenced by the season, or your sleeping is limited by a number of hours, say from 12 to 7? So irrespective of summer and winter, you sleep for these hours. Which one is true? I mean, I'm asking that your sleeping pattern changes for seasonal changes. Does it actually happen?
The sleeping pattern, that actually happens. Sleeping pattern changes over the time of the season, actually.
Okay. So personally, I try to fill this kind of time irrespective of the season. But if the season influences your sleeping hours, that is interesting. That means you are aware of the season. And you adjust your sleeping hours based on the adjustment or based on the changes in the season. Okay, fine. Now let me share the experience from the UK or European countries or the countries which are in the North Hemisphere, where the daylight hours is very limited. So for example, when there is a winter, I mean after September, from the September to, what should I say, from the September to February or March, sunset happens at this time. Okay, from which time? From September to March, April, a sunset during this time. And what about the sunrise? Sunrise is at this time. So how much time you're getting for daylight? Less than 8 hours or less than 7 hours? Close to 8 hours? Yes, no? You are there?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay. And this is for which time? This is for winter. This is for winter. And during summer, it goes to 8 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. and it goes to 6 a.m. You're not getting more daylight during this time. It is for sunrise, it is for sunset during summer.
Yes, sir. Way longer than the winter.
Okay. So for those people, summer and daylight is very attractive. And don't you think that their winter is like our winter, where there is very moderate kind of temperature, or temperature like 10, 15 like this? The temperature most often ranges below 0% and ranges between -2 or -1 to 3, 4% all day around. All day around. And on the 12 p.m. or 1 p.m., the temperature may go to 6 or 7 Celsius highest. Okay. In which time? During winter. Okay. At the same time, their winter is not like very sunny winter. Their winter is very kind of gloomy winter. And all day the sky is gloomy. And do you feel, will you feel happy when you see the sky and you see the sky is very gloomy? What do you think? Your happiness changes? If that whole day spends like a gloomy day, you feel happy for that, or you feel you should not feel, you do not feel happy, or you feel that it does not affect your happiness? What do you think? Which one is true? This background discussion obviously have impact on the upcoming discussion, so keep it in your mind. I'm just trying to clear the background. What do you think? When the daylight is very limited and the sky is gloomy, do you feel less happy? Does your happiness get affected?
It
Yes.
does.
It does. Okay. So when you feel unhappy, do you recognize that it affects your decision making? Say you like to go to a shopping, but you see the weather is not very shiny, and you changes your decision. You change your decision.
Yes, sir.
That happens actually, right? Okay. So Kamstra et al., Kamstra and some other people who did their research in 2003, they go for making analysis that whether this kind of changes in season, which causes changes in their mind, their feeling, does it have any impact on the stock market? So this seasonal affective disorder, I mean, when the season does not seem good, this will have influence on the individual's mind, and it may in turn go influence on the stock market. So there will be two reasons. I will try to explain later, but make it clear that they have started their paper by quoting this from a verse. And it has been found that God is biased to the light. God is not, God does not like the night. God loves which one? Light. And God gives more weight to the light, less weight to the night, more weight to the daylight. So it starts with this thing, and it is saying that when this seasonal affective disorder happens, it causes depression among the people because of fewer number of hours of daylight or sunlight. So when you feel depressed, there might be argument that what people will do. Will people go for taking more risk or taking less risk? So it has been found that when people feel depressed because of the fewer hours of sunlight, they tend to take less risk because they are in a depression mood. And the opposite thing happens when there is a good sunlight or there is a more number of hours of sunlight. So one question they like to ask that as these changes in season have influence on the individual's feeling, individual sentiment, will it have any impact on the stock return? So what kind of impact? Say, for example, can you recall the winter time? What I just have mentioned in European country from September to March. Okay. But very extreme winter is during this time, September to December, this time. Okay. And their summer starts from April and April to and last up to September. Okay. Now the question is, during this time, during extreme winter, February, March is not extreme winter. December, November are very extreme winter time or very time for very low temperature. Okay. So if people are depressed during this time, during the winter time, because of the less hours of sunlight, people will have the tendency to take less risk. In that case, what will happen to the stock price? If people are very risk averse or people do not go for taking high risk during this time, during winter time, will the stock price get inflated or deflated or get impressed or get depressed? What will happen? What do you think?
Deflated.
It is likely to get deflated or it is likely to get depressed. Okay. Now, if any person buys a stock during this time, when the stock price got depressed, in which time? Say in winter. Is it likely that that person will have a higher return after the end of the winter? Have you got the question? If any person buys the stock at a depressed price during the winter, is it likely that the stock will give the investor higher return after the end of the winter?
Supposed to, sir, as per this theory.
Okay. So that exactly happens. So that exactly happens. You see, it is for the United States, their index return, and it is for the other countries. And most of the countries are in the North Hemisphere. And you know very well which countries are in North Hemisphere, which countries are in South Hemisphere. The number of countries in South Hemisphere is very low. Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, these countries are in South Hemisphere. And the weather pattern differs from the weather pattern in the Northern Hemisphere. Okay. So it has been found that, say, in which period the return is very high? In which month? January.
Seems like January.
January. Okay. You see, what is the likely reason? The likely reason is that the stock price was in a very depressed in the winter, which are continuing during this time. Obviously, winter continues till March, but extreme winter is felt during this period. So it has been found that return tends to get higher when the winter ends or winter is close to end in the January. So there might be there might have influence from other factors, but it has been found that monthly those factors have been controlled. The factors which might have influenced on the return, those factors have been controlled. After controlling that, it has been found that the stock return tends to be higher during this month, and authors like to attribute this high return for the depressed price during the winter because of the less number of or fewer number of daylight hours. Okay. What I mentioned for the summer time, can you recall? Then when summer starts from April to, I mean, I'm distinguishing just whether between summer and winter. When I am saying summer, there is a spring. Okay. So spring actually starts from April. So summer from June, this tends to continue up to September. Okay. What happens during this time? Daylight hours is more. Number of daylight hours. Very quick, you have to respond. Otherwise, I can't continue by myself. During this time, daylight hours is more.
Daylight hour is more, sir. Yes.
Daylight hour is more. Okay. So in that case, for seasonal affective disorder hypothesis, what is the likely feeling of the people? People will feel depressed or people will get happier during this time relatively?
Depressed, I think, sir, right?
During this time, people tend to get depressed during fewer daylight hours, but during this time, daylight hours is more. People will continue to, people will become happier. Okay. So when people will become more happier, people go for taking more risk or less risk?
More risk.
More risk.
Okay. When people go for taking more risk, which is likely, or what is the likely response in the stock market? The stock market will get inflated or deflated?
Happy to inflate it.
The stock market will tend to get inflated. In that case, price will go up. Price will go up. Okay. Now, if you end up buying the stocks during this time when a stock price get inflated, what will be your return after the end of this time? You will get good return or you'll get poor return?
Poor return.
Poor return.
That happens. Okay. So when it is happening after the end of this time. After the end of this time. Okay. So the same or very close picture has been available from other foreign countries, and this is for US and this is for other countries other than US, but the countries which are in the same hemisphere. And it has been found the opposite picture have been found for the southern hemisphere. Okay. Now the thing is that it is kind of the explanation, what we just have made is a kind of sentimental explanation or behavioral explanation. Okay. Now, can anyone try to give a fundamental reason why a person should get unhappier when there is a fewer number of daylight hours? Should there be any fundamental reason other than the emotional reason? My question is clear to you. What can be the fundamental reason which should have impact on the performance of the company and on the return of the stock? Can anyone try? I'm giving you 20 seconds to think of. Just try to find out a fundamental reason why a person should get unhappy when the number of daylight hours is fewer.
Maybe for productivity.
Right. You are in appropriate direction. So you see, which environment is more friendly for production? I mean, for agro production?
More sunlight.
More sunlight. Okay. So if you see the less sunlight or fewer hours of sunlight, you tend to believe that the performance of the company of which stock you are holding, the performance of that company may tend to decline for the fewer number of sunlight hours. In that case, what can you get the reason, fundamental reason that if it actually happens, that person should be unhappy? Investors should be unhappy? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay. So let's finish up that paper that it has been found that during the months of low sunlight hours, depression rises. And on an average, it has been found the stock return at the end of the January. You see, this is not the beginning of the January, this is the ending of the January. So it is now far from the winter. Okay. And opposite effects for countries in the southern hemisphere, and we can try to believe that the seasonal effect disorder influence the investors, and it also influences the market return by influencing the stock prices. Okay. Now, sports sentiment and stock return. So Edmonds and other authors, researchers try to find out whether the winning or losing in the sport, does have any impact on the stock return in their market. So it has been found the presence of a strong emotional impact, and which sports have been included in their analysis. These sports have been included in their analysis. So let's try to see the findings, and we will try to have discussion later. Okay. So they have summarized the number of games here, and they have also summarized the mean return after the sport event. Say, for example, today is March 6. So say on this day, say this game is happening. World Cup elimination game is happening for a particular country. Say, for example, Portugal. This Portugal is playing with, say, with Spain on March 6 for this round, World Cup elimination game round. So what authors try to see what happens to the stock return on the March 7 of these countries, Portugal and the Spain. And it has been found that, say, for example, Portugal has won the game on the elimination, and Spain has been eliminated from this round. So it has been found that after the win, say, win in the game on March 6, the stock return responds positively on March 6. And after the elimination of Spain on March 6, it has been found the stock return in the Spain Stock Exchange responds negatively on March 7. So you see, for each of the losses, for each of this game, on an average, it has been found that the returns are negative on that particular day after this event, or after this game event. But after the win in this game, and it has been found with the win, stock return tends to respond positively. But these are some exceptions. So obviously there will be debate that how reliable these papers are, but these papers are from the #1 or top tier journals in the finals. Okay, so these are not very avoidable paper, and these are very considerable paper, and you have to address this, and you can relate it with our Bangladeshi game. Say, for example, when Bangladesh national cricket team won against a very competitive team, say, for example, Bangladesh has won against the Australia, and it is likely, or you might see, that people are very happier after that day. I mean, Bangladesh has won on the 6th March. You'll see people tend to feel happier after this 7th or 8th March. Have you seen this kind of things, that people tend to continue happy after the event day? Have you seen this? So when
Yes, sir,
people,
very true.
yeah, so when people feel happier, what they do? They tend to take more risk. So which one is more risk? Savings certificate or stock market? Which one is more risk?
Stock market is more riskier.
So people tend to go to stock market to purchase stock, or if people are already in a stock market, people might be engaging in taking, people might be engaging in holding more speculative stock, which are more riskier. Okay. Okay. Related to the stocks which are more safer, kind of blue chip companies, which are more safer. Those are not very riskier. Okay. Now, it has been found that it is kind of the summary statistics, not the statistical regression or relationship analysis. So in regression analysis, it has been found that for loss in the World Cup elimination stage, it causes losing 49 basis point of the stock return on the following day. So you already have got it, that what I'm trying to mention. Okay. Now, it has been found the gain effect, corresponding gain effect is not significant. See, the t-values are significant. T-values indicate what? Significance level. So you see, most of these, each of these are for each of the game type. So this for World Cup group game, then World Cup elimination game, there is a European Championship. Okay. But you see, most of the t-values are greater than 2. That's why the decline in the stock return in response to loss in this event are significant. But if you just compare the p-values here for the win event, you see each of these p-values is insignificant because these are less than 2. These are less than 2. So you see people are making the influence is more for loss. The influence is not significant for win. So one reason, one corresponding or one convincing reason is the explanation from the prospect theory. Can you recall the difference that people act differently in the gain region and loss region? Can you recall that people respond differently when there is a gain and when there is a loss? Okay. So you have to relate it. Okay. Now you see, football is not very important in some countries. So say, for example, I may not be very precise. Say, for example, West Indies. So West Indies is not a country. Okay. Say New Zealand. For New Zealand, cricket is more important. So it has been found that the impact on the stock market for the sports is most or more for those games which are more important to their country. So if cricket is more important to the New Zealand, in that case, New Zealand Stock Exchange will try to experience this kind of changes in stock return for their win or loss in the for their win or lose in the cricket game, not in the football game. Okay. And it has been found that this kind of effect, abnormal effect, is larger for a smaller stock. What do you think? Why should the smaller stock receive more effect compared to the larger stock? I mean, the changes in return, what we just have seen, why it is more true, more possible for the smaller stock, not for the larger stock. Any guess from your side? Okay. Which stocks are more likely to be efficiently priced? Efficiently priced. Is larger stocks or smaller stocks? Large cap, small cap. You are familiar with this. we have our portfolio manager.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay. What do you think? Which stocks are likely to be more efficiently priced? Larger stocks or smaller stocks?
Efficiently priced are larger stocks, sir.
Larger stocks. What is the likely reason?
Uh,
One single
Sir,
important
more
reason.
information,
Right, exactly.
are available.
Exactly. More information is available for larger stock. Okay. So in that case, those stocks are less likely to be influenced for this sentimental reason. And smaller stocks which for which information has shortage, and smaller stocks might be included in kind of some speculative stocks. So the stocks for which investors tend to make more speculation, those stocks tend to get influenced for this kind of behavioral reason. So one reason can be sentiment reason, what we are just trying to see. Okay, now mood and risk attitude. So do you think that the mood affects your risk attitude? That means when you are in a positive mood, you tend to be more riskier, and when you are in a negative mood, you tend to be less riskier. Does it happen to you? Yes, no. If you are in a rich mood or happy mood, are you likely to take more risk?
Yes, in a happy mood, people are
Okay. Are you aware of the demographics who buy the saving certificates in our country?
mostly retired people.
Hmm.
That's the highest contribution. Retired people or old people.
Okay. In terms of, I would say that in terms of richness, are they more richer?
Not.
They
There
have
is a
got
controversy. There, not really, but there
not really, but you might
is
argue,
controversy
but
that more HNWs are buying.
okay, but in demographics, I mean, in terms of the income
Number of
distribution,
peoples and income distribution.
right?
Yeah.
In terms of income distribution, which people are buying saving certificates more, the rich people or the poor people?
Poor people. If we simplify.
If you simplify.
Yes. Because rich people are investing in businesses. That's it, sir.
Okay. So there might be variation, but it depends on some other factors also. It depends on individuals' own characteristics, but sometimes it is observed that the people who are in happier mood, they are more optimistic, and they tend to when we ask about some positive events and ask them estimate the probability of that event, they tend to estimate higher probabilities for those event because they are happier people. And the opposite thing, when we ask the people who are more not happier or who are more sad people, and if we ask the probability to for some negative events, you will see that they are estimating higher probabilities for the negative events. So actually this mood does have impact on the probability assignment by these people. But other than this mood, the individual's own situation or own characteristic might have influence on the risk taking or risk avoidance. So one example is that some people are more optimistic when they are happy. They tend to believe that they will win a gamble. But though they believe that they will win the game, it is more likely. But if you ask them to engage in gambling, they tend to avoid it. So feeling that it is very likely that they will win and the actual engagement, these two things are different. So say, for example, the people who are very optimistic, they might believe that stock market is a very good choice for them. And if they really invest in the stock market, they will make a good return. But you may end up seeing that they are not investing in the stock market, though they are believing that they would make more money there. They are investing more in the risk-free securities. So it is not necessarily true all the time that when people are more happy, they are always risk-taking. So sometimes you may find out that happy people are more risk-averse. Happy people are more risk-averse. So it might be one of the explanation that you will find that a good number of people are buying risk-free securities in our country who might make more money by making investment in the stock market, but they are making money in the stock, they are making money in the risk-free market or in the savings certificate market, which does not, which is not consistent with their happiness. So happy people tend to take more risk. Okay, now it is actually difficult to link up that a happy person will always go for taking more risk. Okay, so we'll try to see some experiments which actually have been made by authors, okay, or by researchers. Okay, so Wright and Bauer, what they did, they examined how emotions influence people to make estimation of the probabilities for some certain event. So say, what they did, they allocated the students into different groups. And one group of students has been asked that you recall the positive events from your past life. So they start recalling their positive, good events in their past life. Say they have won the gamble, or they achieved their PhD, or they got their graduation, or they got a huge sum of money, or they got a house from, got a home from their parents. So these things, these happy events, they are recalling. Okay, or they won a competition. These things, they are happening. And okay. And another group of students has been asked that you recall some negative events from your past memory. So they have started recalling that some accidents in their life, some diseases they faced in their life, and failures in their academic life, and some loss they incurred in their business. These things they started to recall. Okay. Now say this group are group A, and this group I just have mentioned, this group is in group B. Now, can you ask me now which people will emotionally be more happier right now? People A in group A or people in group B? Just try to relate it with yourself. When you start recalling your positive memories, it gives you a positive vibe. And the exactly opposite thing happens when you start to recall the negative things. When you start recalling negative events, it gives you a negative emotion and it depresses you. Does it happen? Does it happen?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Now, now they have been asked some questions. So one question is like that estimate a probability of the event that I will be hit by a car in the next 5 years. Now, what do you think for this statement? They have been asked the probability. They have been asked to express the probability. These people will give more probability for this event, or these people will assign more probability for this event.
Group B will assign.
Group B will assign more probability for this event. Why? This event is a negative event or positive event? This event is a positive event or negative event?
Negative.
This event is a negative event, and these people have been prepared in a way that they are right now in a negative emotion, right? So that's why they are estimating higher probability for negative event, right? Okay. Now, second question, in the next year, I will make a very good new friend. What do you think? Which group will assign more probability for this particular event? This group or this group? I will make a very good new friend. It is a positive event. Which group is likely to assign more probability for this positive event? Group A or group B? Or the sad people or happy people? Optimistic or pessimistic people?
Happy people. Happy people.
Happy people will assign
Happy
more
people.
probability. Okay. So exactly the same thing happened. Exactly same thing has been found from this experiment. And you see that people in happy mood, this line, yeah, this line, this negatively sloped line is for the people who are in happy mood, and this positively sloped line is for the people who are in sad mood, and close to horizontal line, it is for the people who have not been aroused for any positive or negative events or for emotions. Okay. Now here is the positive event in the left region, and on the right region, these are for the negative events. And on the vertical axis, probabilities, what they have estimated have been averaged out. Okay. So it has been found that people in happy mood, you see, think positive events are more likely. This, I'm mentioning this. People in happy mood, they assign more probabilities for positive event. Okay. Relative to which people? Relative to neutral people And what negative people did, I mean negative people, it's not actually negative people, I mean the people who are in sad mode, okay. So they estimated low probability for which events? Sad mode people. They estimated low probability for positive events. So you see the number that people in happy mood think positive events will occur with probability 53%. Say it is here, 53%. But people in sad mood, they estimated probability for the same positive event only 37%. And you see the in between, the neutral people who are in neutral mood, they are in between. Okay. Now what happened for the negative event? And for negative event, which people tend to assign more probability? The people who are in sad mood or the people who are in happy mood? Which people?
Sad mode.
Sad mode. You see the people who are in sad mode, for the negative events, they have estimated more probability. They are assigning more probabilities relative to the people who are in positive mood. They are assigning less probability for negative event. So let me share another, I mean, okay. Okay. Let me share another paper, which is related to how people assume the risk and how it get influenced for the emotions in which they belong. Okay. Now, affect is very closely related to mood and sentiment and feeling, but it is distinctive from the emotion in a sense that it can be classified into positive or negative or good or bad, happy or sad, in this kind of categories. Okay. Now Johnson and Tversky, what they did, they tried to estimate that how people assign probabilities for the future events. So they asked a number of students to read newspapers. So the students who read the sad contents heavily, they are in sad mood. I mean, they immediately turn to sad mood. And the students who read the happy news in the newspaper, they immediately turn to happy or positive emotion. So these people are asked to estimate the probability of different risky outcomes. And what the authors did later, the authors compared that how the probability assignment by these two groups. One group is happy group. Happy group means this group has read only which contents of the newspaper? Happy contents. I mean the good contents, positive contents. And another group of students who read the sad contents of the newspapers. And let's try to see that how their probabilities assignments are different. So they have been given tasks to estimate the probabilities of some events. You see the events. So some events are related to life problems. Some events are related to non-fatal risk. Some events are fatal risk. So which events are fatal risks? Say airplane accident, war and terrorism, stomach cancer, then still crime. These are some fatal risks. Non-fatal risks, say some general kind of weather disaster, flood, tornado, then stroke, heart attack. These are kind of non-fatal. Okay. Now some life problem, some kind of, say, alcoholism, then divorce, then unemployment, then bankruptcy. So these events are life problems. So this, you see some white bar here, white box here. You see a white bar? You see the white bar here?
Yes.
Okay. This white bar are for the probabilities assigned by the people who read the positive news. Who read the positive news. And the black bar indicates the probability assigned by the people who read the sad news in the newspaper. You see, say for example here, in most of the cases, if you just compare the white bar and the black bar, which bar on an average is more, I mean the distance is more longer, I mean the height is more, or the length is more, black bar or white bar? Yes, no, on an average?
It's a black.
So who are assigning more probabilities for this risky event?
Negative. Who read the negative news?
The negative news on the newspaper. So sentiment actually affects how people perceive the risk, how people risk attitude, how people changes their attitude for risk. Okay. So sentiments can be compared with a filter which changes our perception, then how we perceive an uncertainty. Say, for example, airplane crash is very unlikely event. So objectively, the probability for airplane crash is very least, very poor number. But the people who are emotionally influenced, they will place a very high probability for airplane crash, and they will assume that it is very risky to fly air, rather it is very safer to use the road transport. But objectively, road transport is more riskier and more likely to get, more likely to face the accident. So that actually happens, and that actually influences the risk attitude of the people. Okay. And optimistic people think that good people are more likely, good outcomes are more likely, and pessimistic people assume that sad event or negative event are more likely. So we already have got the evidence of that. And what can we do? We can look for the reason, that what might be the reason for growth of sentiment among us, and how it grows up, or how our emotion get influenced by the external factors or internal factors. Okay. So two factors or two categories can be made for the sentiment. One category is exogenous and another category is endogenous. So endogenous category of sentiment are those sentiment which arise from the economic system, or economic vulnerabilities, or economic growth, which is quite persistent, and which is a matter for a macroeconomist, and which economists try to recognize it. Okay. Can you recall some sentiment which come from economic system changes? For example, our per capita income, say, for example, our per capita income is growing. Our per capita income is growing, whatever the reason. In that case, what is the average response, or what is the average emotion of the people? People tend to be more happier related to past. Yes, no? If per capita income grows, it is directly related to the economic system. And if our, say, for example, production has increased by many fold in our country, what do you think? Our people will be more happier? Yes, no?
Yes, more
Okay.
happier.
And if, say, for example, any economic disaster might happen, say, for example, a big financial default, say, for example, a hallmark scam, what will happen? The opposite thing is likely to happen, and these are connected to the economic system, which influences. Okay. Now, another category of sentiment which are not endogenous, which are known as exogenous sentiments. So what are those sentiments? So those sentiments are less relevant for macroeconomics, and those sentiments are less permanent or more temporary. So what kind of sentiments are those? For example, if I ask you, can you recall this sentiment? Sports, where it is? This one, the sports sentiment. Can you tell me the sports sentiment is exogenous or endogenous sentiment?
Exogenous.
Exogenous, fine. And what about the this one, daylight hours, so influence of daylight hours? It is exogenous or endogenous?
Exogenous.
It is also exogenous because these are out of the economic system. These are differ from the, or these are not part of economic system. Okay. So we'd like to end our discussion here, and we have some remaining discussion on sentiment.